Here's a more advanced exercise you can use on any jazz song or any song of any kind, actually. And some of the chords in some songs are going to be more triadic, so you can use more triads as opposed to jazz chords with extensions and bigger chords. On the triads, if a song is a triad, then you've got your root, your third, and your fifth. And so it sort of simplifies things in a way, and I recommend that you use my chord stacks. So we're going to include some chord stacks in here so you can sort of see how that works and if that's helpful for you. But as soon as you start to look at adding seventh into a chord stack, it starts to get a little more dense, let alone if you add upper extensions like ninths and 11ths and 13ths. So it does get to be a little more tricky. And when we start looking at jazz chords, then my rule is that instead of adding a third or a root or a fifth under the melody, I will add a third or seventh or root. That's sort of the general rule. So underneath this melody, I'm going to add in relation to the chord that's happening. So for example, on the first note, it's a G, and we're going to consider it a G major triad. So I could play, or I could play the root again, or the fifth, right? But if I treat it more like or you could do any combination. You're getting all the notes of the triad there, right? Now, if I think of it as a jazz chord with a major 7, then I could go for that major 7. I like that approach. I mean, that's bold, that's daring, right? I mean, so we're putting that, but it really sounds. So let's just look at those briefly so we can harmonize. If we treat this as G major 7, E minor 7, so I've got the third here, and we're going to add the root and the 7th. So that's a perfect E minor 7. You don't need the 5th. That's the point. Now for my B minor, if I treat it as a triad, then I can just do that. But if I want it to be a jazz chord, then we can go root, third, 7th, and then there's your melody in the 5th. Now this one's tricky. If we treat this as a G major 7, then that's easy. We could also treat it as G major 7 going to G sharp 5th, which is a nice way to lead into the C chord. That's probably the easiest way to do the C major chord, right? Just technically. But if you really wanted to try to get that 7th in there, I kind of like that, actually. And then this is a nice way to do a sus chord, D sus. It's basically C over D. Even though I didn't always treat it that way. Sometimes I just treated it like, which has got your, again, if that's a D7, then we've got 7 and third, and there's our melody in the 9th. So, and then if we go back to G major 7, again, all I'm doing is I'm looking for, underneath my melody note, I'm looking for, can I find a 7th or a third or a root or any combination that is playable for me on the instrument. And the more that I do this with songs, the more that you do this with songs, the more that it will be second nature to you. So, so we'll go to the, we can treat this A minor chord. I like that. And then this next chord, which we can think of as a C minor 6th, then we can use the 6 if we want. And then here, if we treat this as a G major, we could do that. But I find that to be difficult, so sometimes I just throw the D in my 4th finger. Now here is kind of a tricky thing. I'm really using upper extension voice leadings here. So this, what I'm implying here is an E7 with a flat 9, and then of course the melody's in the sharp 5. So it looks like an F minor chord, which is the upper extension, actually. I guess it's, sorry. It's sort of awkward to hear that. But if we have do, do, you know, you've got to hear it there. So anyway, here I'm treating it as an A dominant 7. So again, 3rd and 7th. And a lot of times people will treat this as an A minor 7, so you could do that if you prefer. And then your D7, which again, 3rd and 7th. And then G. What I did sometimes was I treated this like G to C to G, or G6 to C minor to G. Right? So you could even get really crazy with it if you want. If you could do or if you really want to get into that. So these are again, the point is you find a melody note and you explore different voicings that you can put underneath that melody note. And if you're treating it more like jazz, then you want to look for that 7th, 3rd, and root combinations. And you don't necessarily want to double the note in the melody, right? And then once you get past that, you can start to look at more of the upper extensions, adding those as well.